Hello there, YouTube. Good morning. Devin here again, and I actually fell way behind on my morning here. So sorry the video is going to be a little bit later than normal, but I thought it was earlier than what it was, because I guess I slept in a little bit. So I just started doing my normal schedule, not realizing it was an hour later than normal. But today's helmet video will be on a pretty common one that a lot of you actually have, and it actually has a relatively interesting story, albeit not all of that interesting of a helmet. It's just an M40, but it's a Finnish M40, and an M40-55 to be exact. Now the history, well, I suppose I could put this on. The history behind the Finnish M40 is actually kind of interesting. So this would be a pattern that the Finns would standardize on, actually kind of just in the later days of World War II. This would be one of the most prevalent helmet designs right behind an interesting story. So we're going to go into all the way back into the earliest Finnish helmets. So the earliest helmets that the Finns would have had after World War I and their separation from Russia, obviously, the Russian Empire. Finland would gain its independence in 1917. Finland was where the very first ever steel helmet for the Russian Empire was being made, the Solberg helmet. And that would be their earliest helmet, not in large enough numbers to field their whole army after gaining independence, because obviously a lot of them would have went to the Russians, and they would have had leftovers that didn't make it to the Russians before they seceded. And they would later go on to refinish those, paint them in this nice shiny black color, and use those actually all the way through World War II. After World War I, though, in the 20s and 30s, they would be buying 16, 17, and 18 Stahlhelms, so like World War I era Stahlhelms from both the Austrians and the Germans to use, and that would be their standard helmet into World War II. So the Winter War starts, obviously, and they start then capturing a bunch of Russian helmets, a bunch of SSH-40s and SSH-36s that they would push into service with rear line units to free more Stahlhelms for the front lines. They would be given Swedish helmets, both 21s, 26s, and 33s from the Swedes as aid. During World War II, during the continuation war, they would start receiving, Hungarian helmets during World War II from the Germans as aid. They would be receiving, Russian helmets that the Germans would have captured as aid. They would be receiving, Czech helmets as aid from the Germans, because the Germans are trying to standardize on, the 35 and 40 pattern, stuff like that. The helmets that the Finns are acquiring throughout the war are absurd. But sometime in late 1942 or 43, they get the machinery to start making their own M40s. So they start making their own M40s, which is exact copy of the German helmet, made on German machines, German machinery for the M40. So they would be making their own M40 helmets just like the German ones. They would be painted in a lighter gray than the German ones obviously would. They would also, contract to buy helmets from Germany at a very discounted rate as one of the German allies during World War II, actual M40s. So you would see a lot of M40s being used by the Finns towards the end of the war. And obviously after World War II, the Finns have this huge conglomeration of helmets. Obviously, if I just explained all of the models they had, they probably had 20 plus different models of helmet they were using throughout the Winter War, the Continuation War, and the Lapland War, which is the three kind of subdivisions of World War II that the Finns participated in. And a brief overview of those is the Winter War was Finland versus the Soviet Union, which Finland won. The Continuation War, which is, Finland and Germany versus the Soviet Union, which they lost. And then there was the Lapland War, which was Finland and the Soviet Union versus the Germans that were still in Finland after the Continuation War. So that was part of their terms of treaty with the Soviet Union, was that they would help the Soviets now push the remaining Germans out of Finland and into Norway. during the Lapland War. So a lot of people don't know about that. So 1950s roll around, Finland decides that they really need to find a standardization for a helmet. They realize that probably the best design that they got, at least one of the most updated designs that they got during the war, which actually is the most updated design that they got during the war. And it was also something that they had a lot of familiarity with their years of Stahlhelms that they were using during World War II, all the World War I era Stahlhelms they were using. So they decided to standardize on the M40 helmet in 1955, which is where this gets the name the 1940-55. Now, the easiest way to tell a Finnish M40 from a German M40 is either by the fact that it has this little hole in the side, like this one does, or it'll have a little rivet there. And the difference for that is because the Finns, their chin strap was separate from the liner. So the Germans, the chin strap is sewn or riveted right onto the little aluminum liner band that, you know, the suspension is sitting on. The Finns didn't like that. They wanted a separate chin strap from their liner, and not that they probably wouldn't have liked to have the same, to the one-piece chin strap liner system, but it just eased logistics a lot. Because then you don't have one piece. If something breaks, you don't have to junk the whole liner. So if your chin strap breaks, you just replace the chin strap. If your liner breaks, you just replace the liner. It's simpler for logistics. It kind of made stuff a little bit easier to manufacture. So that's why the Finns kind of did that. So that's the easiest way to tell a Finnish M40 from a German M40. And a lot of Finnish helmets, I don't know for how long, but as long as I've been seeing them, have been getting passed off as actual like German World War II helmets, which isn't necessarily correct because they have this little liner. Now, it's the same M40. They're made on the same machines as the German ones are. So it's a German M40. The steel quality is pretty much the same. It's a pretty heavy, pretty sturdy, pretty rugged helmet. Same exact machinery, probably Waffen-Amps and everything on it that the Finns got. So it's the same helmet other than that little hole where the chin strap would have been riveted in. And that's because the Finns didn't really use an aluminum liner band. They had a leather liner band in a lot of their helmets. Just like the World War I era Stahlhelms. So like the 1916 Stahlhelm, they'd have a leather liner band rather than the steel or aluminum one that the Germans would go to in 1917, 1918, and would be apparent on all of their helmets. Basically, the rest of the Stahlhelms they would use would have that aluminum or steel liner band. The Finns would use a leather liner band because aluminum is a kind of precious metal during the 40s and 30s, so they would use leather liner bands because they obviously have a lot of animals in Finland, a lot of herding, a lot of cows and caribou, reindeer, stuff like that. So they had leather available, more leather than aluminum. So they would use a leather liner band, a leather chin strap, and a leather suspension, and it would be separate on all their World War II helmets. So you could see the Stahlhelms, especially after getting to Finland, the earlier World War I Stahlhelms, the 1916s, 17s, and 18s, they would have those little holes drilled, just like that. These little holes drilled into the sides of them for the chin strap. So all the Stahlhelms would be taking the same liner after they would get to Finland, which would ease logistics again, because then no matter what, you could just drop in a new liner and a new chin strap into those helmets. And sometimes you'll see the little lugs for the chin strap on the German ones ground off. Stuff like that, because that's just what the Finns did. They didn't need those lugs anymore for the chin strap because they put those two little holes in. But in 1955, they would standardize all the way back around to 1955, which is where this helmet, the 4055, gets its name. They would standardize on this pattern, the 1940 helmet, all right, with back to the liner and the chin strap being one piece. So you would see all of the 1940s that they got and the Hungarian 38s, which was similar enough to the 1940. They would keep those, and then they would use their machines to start cranking out these again. So you can find a lot later ones without the holes. So usually the classic wartime ones, so every helmet made before, that is either a Hungarian 38 or a German-made M40 or a World War II made Finnish M40 is going to have these holes, okay? That's how you could tell it was made before 1955. If it was made after 1955, but it's still this color and it has these kind of rivets and this really nice kind of looking liner, it would be a true 55 helmet rather than a 40-55. It would be a true 55, a true Finnish model 55 helmet, because the liner and the chin strap would be one piece, so they wouldn't have drilled these holes into it. But the World War II wartime productions, which is when most of them were made, they really wouldn't have been making a lot of helmets after World War II. So most of the ones from before 1955 are going to have these holes because they were made during World War II or were sent as aid from World War II, and they will have these holes because they were probably fielded in World War II and had the separate chin strap. But in 1955, they would pound these rivets out and replace them with this kind of standard liner, which is chin strap, and they would use those until, well, basically until the adoption of the Swedish 3365, I want to say it is. That might be different, someone will correct me, but it's basically the Swedish M33 helmet with the M1 style suspension, the Riddell type suspension with all the webbing and the leather sweatband. In the 70s. So the Finns would be using this helmet until basically the 70s when they would adopt that kind of design, and they would field that helmet all the way up until the adoption of their Kevlar helmet in the 90s. So, but this is the the Finnish M40-55 helmet. A lot of collectors have these. It has a really interesting history. It's in obviously stone gray. It's a very high quality Stahl helm. It's one of the better options if you're trying to do like a reenactment, because it is a legit Stahl helm. And if you wanted to make it German, obviously you could just pound these little rivets out, which isn't too hard to grind off or anything like that. You could take some resin and fill these two little holes, sand it flat, repaint it, and bam, you're good to go with a German World War II helmet. But you're not destroying like an actual like piece of history, a very expensive German piece of history, considering the Finns had millions of these. You know, laying around, and they were very cheap for a long time. They're getting quite expensive. As you see, this one is in really, really nice shape. The liner is basically even unused. You can still see the size mark there. So that's a long, long history for this helmet, and I don't think people realize that the history of this helmet is that complicated, but the Finnish history itself, as far as all of their equipment, is likewise equally as complicated and just an absolute clusterfuck, and I don't know how they dealt with it. But so now we're going to take a closer look at the liner. So I have a Finnish liner outside of the helmet as well, like one of the earlier Stahlhelm liners that they would have used. So we're going to take a look at that as well, side by side with the liner at this helmet. So we're going to flip the camera around, take a look at the liner, take a look at the liner that would have been used before this helmet, and stuff like that. The 40s pattern liner rather than the 55 pattern liner like this. So stay tuned for that, and then afterwards we're going to flip the camera back around, put the helmet on, try it out, see how it fits, how it feels, all the other good jazz, and then we will conclude the video. Alrighty, so we have the 40-55 here on the left, and then we have the liner that I got out of a Finnish refurbished Austro-Hungarian M17 helmet. Now this is the liner that you would see most common during World War II, and as you can see, it's kind of the classic German 3-pad style, but they would be putting these into the helmets in like the 30s. So as you can see, they did away with the aluminum or steel band that you would see on the later German World War, I helmets. And then you could see the 3 holes where the split pins would have went. There's one here in the rear where obviously this huge thick leather band is stitched together, and then there's one here at each temple, okay, but then you can see there's 2 extra little side holes, one here and one here, and that's how the classic way to tell if it was finished, because that's where the chin strap would have been riveted in place. So through the shell, which is why these Finnish helmets have these little side holes like this. And it's also another good way to tell that it's Finnish is it has this very like white leather. They were using this very, very thick but very, very kind of like supple white leather. It's a very soft, very nice leather to have like against your head and stuff, obviously. So it was very comfortable. But that's like what a lot of the Finnish World War II helmets would have had before they standardized on this in 1955. So just to give you a frame of reference, that this is what most of the Finnish World War II soldiers would have been wearing in the like World War I era Stahlhelms, and everything, which was their most common helmet right up until obviously they decided to standardize on this M40 pattern in 1955. So just to give you a cool frame of reference. So the chin strap that would have went with this would have been very similar to this one. It's a very heavy, thick, kind of not black, but like dark gray leather. You could see black and stuff, obviously. There's probably some manufacturer things. The reverse side is obviously also that very, very dark gray. It's an incredibly thick leather, and then I don't know if you could pick it up, but there's the leather stamp right there. It is a like caribou in that stamp, which is really cool to see that that stamp is intact because this helmet is so unused. Now, if we flip the liner up, you can see it has this nice comfort, considering this nice kind of foam in there, and this foam hasn't disintegrated yet because this helmet is so obviously unused. And then if we flip around, you could see the various split pins that the fins use to hold their helmet in place. Now, rather than getting like the really big split pins like the Germans did, they used tiny split pins and washers because that's just what they had. So that's why they kind of have this like two-tone thing. It's like a stainless steel split pin and then like a zinc plated washer, and that's what all of their rivets are. It's this kind of zinc plated washer with this little stainless steel split pin. Now you can see that also during World War II they were using smaller split pins and washers. Some helmets you can find, they don't even use split pins, they're just hard riveted, which is kind of something weird. And I've seen some of them with copper rivets. I don't know if that was standard. I've seen others with brass rivets and brass split pins and stuff like that. It seems they kind of just used what they had on hand in order to obviously get more helmets to the front. So, but I'm not sure if one is more historically accurate than the other, or if one was done afterwards or whatnot. So I really am unsure on that. But I've seen a lot of variations in Finnish helmets, which once again, credit to their logistics during World War II, and as good as they were, because I wouldn't want to deal with that if I was in supply. This conglomeration of just huge amounts of crap that has nothing to do with each other, you know what I mean, that the Finns had to deal with. So that's what the liner looks like, you know, a little bit more in depth. It's this big series of tongues. It's perforated here at the front for, you know, sweat. It's made in two pieces and obviously sewn here at each side. It's a series of little tongues. The tongues are unreinforced. You see some of the later German ones, they have another leather disc back here, like a leather washer that's glued to these tongues to keep them from tearing out. The Finns really didn't seem to bother with that. As you see here, like with their earlier World War II one, you can see that they have these nice grommets put in to reinforce the holes to keep the leather tongues from tearing out, which would obviously ruin the liner. They didn't seem to care about that on the 55, as you could see, even though they're made out of the same kind of white leather, which is a durable leather, to be fair, but they just didn't bother to put the reinforcements in on these. It could be just this one. Maybe some of them do have reinforcements. I'm not sure. Once again, it's Finland. Anything is possible. So, but now we're going to, done looking at the liner, we're going to flip the camera back around. I'm going to put this helmet on. We're going to see if it, you know, bites going prone, see what it looks like being worn, all that other good jazz. And then we will conclude this very long, information-heavy video. Alrighty, so we are back here with the Finnish M40-55, which is a true M40-55 because it has little holes, once again, as I explained. So hopefully this helps you identify your Finnish helmet, whether it is a true M40-55 or just a plain old M55. But we're going to put this helmet on now with the chin strap and everything. We're going to see how it bites, how it fits, how it feels compared to other helmets of the era, which most of them are also kind of this same helmet, basically. A lot of Stell helms. So here we go. So my chin strap is obviously pretty bent from being used to being over the bill, but I like a little bit of slack in it here. This is perfect, you know, where it fits not quite tight underneath the chin, but there's not really a finger's width of space in there. That's about how you should be wearing it. You don't want to have it really tight against your skin, obviously, because then it'll bite and it'll rub in, but you want to have just a slight amount of slack, not quite a finger's width in there. And this one just happens to line up really nice with their pre-drilled holes like that. You could obviously put your own hole in the chin strap to achieve this fit, but this is how it was supposed to be worn. Not perfectly tight, but you know, about a finger's width between you. A lot of soldiers would wear it like this. You see most of them obviously with their chin straps up on their bill, because there was that whole thing, you know, that you don't want somebody to grab your helmet and, you know, yank your head back, or you don't want an explosion to tear your head off, even though if that was close enough for you to, you know, an explosion to create that much of a shockwave to tear your head off, you would also be probably vaporized or blown to pieces or something. But, you know, soldiers aren't usually the brightest people, and they're very superstitious for the most part. But, and I also, like, if I do need it, I can put I have enough slack in the chin strap to actually put it like up on your chin, where your chin strap is supposed to be worn, on your chin. That's why it's called a chin strap. Not here in the nape of your neck, or it would be called a nape strap. You know what I mean? So up on your chin, and this is how it's probably the most comfortably meant to be worn, because it's a lot easier to take off. It obviously is the point on your helmet that is going to provide the most tension and provide the most comfort without, you know, obviously cutting into your neck. So, but this is what the Finnish M40-55 looks like from the front. As you can tell, helmet looks like it was almost made for me. It's about a perfect fit. It has just the right amount of space in it to look not gigantic on my head, or not too small on my head. It's almost perfect. It's one of my favorite helmets. This liner distributes the weight, credit to the Germans, quite well. It's a very comfortable helmet to wear. The Finnish leather in this, and the Finns do leather really, really well. This is a really, really nice leather liner. That foam kind of behind the leather doesn't have a lot of give to it, but it has just enough give. It's a really pleasant helmet to wear. This would be a very hot helmet, despite the fact that it does have vent holes. This could be pretty warm pretty quick, obviously with the leather and that foam behind it, you know, right against your skin. So really there's no way for airflow to get up around your head other than these vents. So these vents are also kind of tiny. So if you have a lot of hair and it's summer out and it's humid and you're sweating a lot, you're going to build up a lot of heat and moisture in the dome of your helmet, which is probably why a lot of Finns didn't like to wear them. So same thing with a lot of Germans. Probably didn't like to wear them most of the time unless you were actually fighting. You would be wearing your hat. But this is what the helmet would look like from the front, just like a German M40. This is the right side profile of the helmet. This is the rear profile of the helmet. So now simulating going prone. Obviously the Finns probably would have seen these as an upgrade from the World War I style helmets they were using, because the skirt is cut back just a little bit, so that way when you go prone, as you can see, this one still bites in. That's still touching my neck, and that's a problem that the skirts would have. Is they would, especially, you know, if you're wearing a lot of clothes in the winter, you know, your big great coat, stuff like that, sweaters and whatnot. And I'm just wearing a t-shirt, and as you can see, it's still cutting in, still hitting, but it doesn't quite hit enough to rock the helmet forward on my head. It hits just basically enough to let you know that it's there. It's not obstructing my vision, but it's still uncomfortable, and it probably would, had I had, you know, more layers of wool like an actual uniform on. It probably would be rocking the helmet forward and obscuring my vision if I was to go prone and needed to see to shoot my rifle. I probably couldn't be able to with this helmet, which is a weird design. It's something that all the Stahlhelms have. You know, a lot of people seem to think the Stahlhelm's like one of the best helmets ever made, but it does have its flaws. And then this is obviously the left side profile. So there is this cool thing that a lot of the Finns and Germans actually thought of this during World War I. If you do need to go prone, or you are going into like an assault, you would put your helmet on backwards, just like this. So you put your helmet on backwards, so then you have the bill obviously in the back, and when you look up, it doesn't bite into your neck anymore. So you're still getting the protection of the helmet, okay? Yes, it is obscuring your view from above a little bit more, but it's not really adding all that much more to your peripherals or anything. You're still losing the same amount of hearing, as you can see. I'm basically touching my earlobe, so it's still obstructing my hearing, as it does the correct way around too, just because of the skirt on it. But when you do this with the bill in the back, and so I'll flip around to look at the prone side, so you can see pictures of German stormtroopers in World War I doing this a lot, and it's a cool thing because it is historically accurate. Now you can see where, you know, the helmet, if I adjust it properly, because the chin strap is now kind of awkward being worn, doesn't touch when I look up, because obviously it has a higher cut right here. So, and the cool thing about that then too is if you are going prone, because this bill sticks out, obviously, it's protecting the upper part of your spine, which is a really exposed portion of your body. So it's a very weak spot. The neck is like the actual Achilles heel of the human body, with all the veins and the arteries and obviously your spinal column and stuff. So having the bill that sticks further back out, so when you're prone, that bill is obviously parallel to the ground. It's going to extend more to cover more of your spine if there's a lot of shrapnel and explosions going off. This is actually a very viable option as far as protection goes. So a lot of people don't know about that you can do that with the Stahlhelm. And so a lot of people think that, you know, the Germans in World War I, the stormtroopers and stuff like that, and the Austrians, were just being funny. by turning their helmets backwards for pictures and stuff. But the real purpose, and it's been stated in like diaries, which is, you know, obviously firsthand sources of soldiers explaining why that was. That yes, sometimes they were doing it just to be goofy, to lighten the mood, but you see a lot of, especially stormtroopers, wearing their helmets backwards. And it's for that reason. It's so you can go prone and still see while still offering the protections, because your helmet won't ride forward in front of your vision like that because of the skirt on it. So that's a cool thing. A lot of you now know, I hope, and I hope that's something that you do try. I encourage you to take your cell helm and put it on and give it a try, because it doesn't feel as awkward as you think it does. Putting your helmet on backwards, your stealth helm on backwards. Like I said, it does obscure your vision a little bit, but no more than the regular build does. It's now just lower, but you can look way further up, prone, because your helmet is now being worn backwards. So it's just a cool little thing for you to try, a little piece of history you probably didn't know. So cool fun facts and stuff like that there. So hopefully you learned something from this video today. Hopefully you thought this helmet was cool. All that other good stuff. As a bit of a nerd, I do tend to enjoy this stuff, and I do try to share this information with you guys, obviously. The Finns have a ton of stuff, a ton of weird information. I by no means in this video covered it. I know there's probably going to be a lot more people adding other helmet models they used and blah blah blah, this and that, and history and yada yada wise. This is a very surface scratching thing of the Finns, because the Finns have such a huge amount of information and so much stuff that they used that you could write entire novels on the stuff that they used. They had so many different variations of things. So, but hopefully you learned something from this video. Hopefully you like this video. If you did learn something or you just enjoyed it, it really helps me in the algorithms a lot. I'm a tiny channel after all. Subscriber count's been doing really well. I appreciate it, each and every one of you. The money's doing okay. The algorithms are kind of hosing me every now and then, but that's all right. That's just YouTube being YouTube. But if you do want to support the channel in some way, shape, or form, I will leave a link to the Patreon that you could just copy and paste right into your browser. There is benefits to that, as little as $1 a month, which I think is the minimum you can donate. You get into the Discord, which there's a bunch of other cool people. It's also the best way to support the channel and stuff like that. You can cancel your subscription anytime, yada yada, this and that. If you think I'm worth more 1 month, by all means, more money is always nice. It goes into supporting the channel, like getting editing software, my nice 4K webcam for when I live stream, which is the best way to talk to me. If you have any questions or anything like that, the Discord's also the best way. The Discord members, they could send me questions, comments, stuff like that. If you have something you'd want to send me, they can have access to my like PO box and stuff like that, to where they could send me cool little things. I get a bunch of cool gifts. Like one of my cool subscribers sent me this awesome set of jungle OCPs, which I am super appreciative of. So I'm gonna send him a real rare ass pair of boots that he liked. Just cool stuff like that. So friends with benefits type of thing. It is a cult. I do call it the cult, because I am the god emperor of the cult. If you're a Warhammer 40k fan, like I am, it's a real cool place to be. And it's not just helmets and surplus. We talk about food, alcohol, tobacco, cool stuff like that. Knives, guns, obviously, tons of other neat little stuff. There's something for everybody there. Vintage video games, Dungeons and Dragons, all that other good jazz. So if there's something for everybody, if it's something you do decide to do, it really does help the channel in a long ways. So I will end my rant here, because obviously when I'm not talking about history, the video watch time absolutely tanks, and that hurts me in the algorithms. But I just want to thank all you guys that do choose to support me. And if you can't, obviously liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing the video and stuff is really going to help in the algorithms a lot, which forces YouTube to pay me like 2 cents per video rather than 1 cent per video. So thank you all, and hopefully I can see all of you here in the next video. Bye-bye now.